Sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
Making 5 wins in a row for the San Diego Chargers, and it is time once again to open the Bolts Brown Bag. Welcome to our 10 News Cafe, Cafeteria Patio as we talk Chargers every Monday at 12:30. I'm Ben Higgins, sports director here at 10 News, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Craig Elsten, a jack of all trades, Mighty 1090 Radio, play-by-play voice of the Sockers, UCSD Sports, and a longtime Chargers friend and my friend. So it's good to see you, Craig.
And you as well, Ben. Great to be here.
Good game yesterday, obviously, to get the victory, but I think the question that everyone is talking about now is, did the game, expose some vulnerabilities, some worries for the San Diego Chargers, or is it a good sign that the Chargers can win on the road with not necessarily playing their best football game and maybe win a game that they might have lost in previous years?
Is all of the above an available answer? Because I really think that is the case. I think we're seeing right now, first things first, a Chargers team that is building momentum, that went out there and listen, you faced a Raiders team that went out and buried the football with Tony Sparano and said new season. They were at home. They were lying in wait, had the opportunity to scheme for the Chargers, and I really think you took the Raiders' best shot yesterday and still won. So in the ultimate scheme, that was a huge win for the San Diego Chargers, an affirming win and something that sets the table for a big season. At the same time, this roster continues to be degraded by injury, and every time there's a little bit more of an effect I think we see week by week on the field.
All right, we're going to talk about it while you're out there hopefully enjoying your lunch, whether it's of the brown bag variety or not. But while you're there, you can go ahead and check. If you're watching right on the screen at 10news.com/Bolts Brown Bag, you can vote in today's Bolts Brown Bag poll. And Craig, I'm going to give you a vote as well here in a second. The question, though, is which newcomer has had the biggest impact on the Chargers season so far? And the three choices are Brandon Flowers, Jason Verrett, or Brandon Oliver. So all three newcomers have obviously had a very positive impact for the Chargers, but which one has had the biggest impact in your mind?
Well, I think Flowers would be at the top of that list right now, and Verrett's charging hard after yesterday. Flowers is the guy who's kind of settled things in the back and given the Chargers multiple positions of strength in the back. It was Weddle and a cast of unknowns last year. Flowers one extra guy, but Verrett, coming on.
But if you were going to say which one did you think was going to have the biggest impact, I think Flowers was the obvious choice at the start of the season. He's an experienced veteran who knows the division coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs. Verrett was probably the number 2 clear choice. He's a first-round draft pick, and if he was going to be healthy, you think, he's going to make some plays. Brandon Oliver was the guy that you never saw coming as someone who was going to contribute for the Chargers. And now this is back-to-back games with over 100 yards rushing. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. And, this is probably the most obvious stat ever, but I saw the Chargers throw it out. He's the first Chargers rookie running back since LT to have back-to-back 100-yard rushing games with a touchdown. So, nice. That is a huge impact the last 2 weeks by Brandon Oliver.
He's been outstanding. How much And wow, what an incredible just surprise performance. I said this yesterday on the radio. You never think when you get to the 4th string of any position that you're going to have somebody who's going to be able to come in and produce at an impact level. You figure you might get a below replacement level type performance. And for Oliver to come out and perform the way he has, incredible. But I think a lot of that does go to what to me is the Chargers' overriding strength, Ben. Their offensive scheme. The way they attack, they find every inch and every yard on the field.
All right, ignore the poll question on the bottom of the screen. That's the one from the last week. Hey, it may still be the Chargers. It might be the Dallas Cowboys. That's okay. The new one is up, though, and that phone number is right. If you want to participate in the show, you can do so. 619-717-6704. That's our Google phone number. You can dial us up if you want to talk a little Chargers football. I want to start by going back to the beginning of the day, though, yesterday, Craig. We had the Chargers on their way to the O.Co Coliseum in Oakland. One of the team buses arrives, and, of course, Oakland Raiders fans get a little mischievous and start pelting it with eggs. And these are pictures taken from inside the bus by Chargers staffers, Jen Rojas, one of the media relations staffers, and Jordan Bean from Chargers.com. Both got a couple of shots of the eggs streaming down the windows. I don't think it inspired the Chargers. It's pretty juvenile for the Oakland Raiders fans to do that. But Hey, you know what? At the end, I loved how the Chargers handled it because they sent out the tweet after the game. This is why you don't throw eggs. Moral of the story, don't throw eggs. So.
I like. Well, they had that, was it a Colin Kaepernick commercial where basically they've got the same thing, right? He's pulling in. So it's almost become a mythology of the NFL now that you're supposed to pelt the visiting team. But good job, Raiders fans. The last thing you needed to do was get the Chargers set off. But then again, Raiders had a chance to win that game. So I don't want to say that the eggs necessarily got the Chargers off on the good foot.
All right, again, if you want to join us, 619-717-6704. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to find out what's for lunch here in just a second when Brandon comes out and brings us, because you got to know what you're eating, right?
Well,
what the special is today.
Hungry.
So someone can go ahead and tell Brandon that it's time for what's for lunch, and we'll find out what's going on. But Chargers, I mean, a lot of people thought they didn't play well in the game yesterday. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you just eliminate the records and eliminate the jerseys and say, okay, you got 2 football teams on the field yesterday. You've got one, the home team. And I would say, okay, well, I look at this team and I say they've got an okay defense with some flaws. They've got a quarterback who looks pretty good. He's hitting most of his receivers who are sometimes catching and sometimes dropping the ball. But I saw a decent NFL team with a few flaws out there. By no means a team that looked like one of the worst in the NFL or a winless team that had been going through the turmoil that we saw the first few weeks with the Raiders. As for the Chargers, I saw what I thought looked like a pretty good offensive football team that was not playing that well on defense and made a couple of mistakes. But, I didn't see a team that was absolutely struggling and looked like, oh, my gosh, they can't do anything wrong. They're keeping this inferior team in the game. Is that what you saw as well?
Well, the one issue that I really have to bring up about the Chargers in terms of not playing well to me is the pass rush. Derek Carr, who's a rookie quarterback, was able to sit back there, and at the end of the game, the only time that he was hit in the game, Ben, was by Jerry Atauchu on the last drive, which was taken back by penalty. Prior to that, 0 quarterback hits, 0 quarterback sacks. So if you can pressure a rookie at all, they're not going to perform the way that Derek Carr performed against San Diego. That's a concern moving forward because when you upgrade to Alex Smith, when you upgrade to Peyton Manning over the course of the next couple of weeks, you give them time to operate, you're going to get carved.
Sure. And I can't really put my finger on what was different, though, because the Chargers' pass rush has been good this season. I mean, they've been getting to quarterbacks. They rattled Blake Bortles in the second half. Geno Smith and Mike Vick never had a chance for the New York Jets, really, in the last game. So this is kind of a new issue, and I'm wondering what the Raiders did and if the Chargers are going to be able to look at the film this week and make the adjustments because the Kansas City Chiefs, another divisional opponent, the Denver Broncos, are going to look at exactly at what the Oakland Raiders did. They were able to keep pressure off of their quarterback. Let's do what they did because the Chargers looked like they weren't able to handle it.
Simultaneously, I seem to remember the Raiders running for about 5.7 per rush last game. I think it was 24 for over 117 yards. So Chargers had some seams exposed defensively. But again, I go back to how many injuries this team has gone through this year to have compiled 5-1 through that. Admittedly, through the easiest part of your schedule, to me, they've accomplished what they needed to do so far.
Well, absolutely. And sitting where they are, if you had told me they were going to have as many injuries as they've suffered, I'd say, 3-3 is probably pretty good. 4-2 would be fantastic. No chance that the Chargers could be 5-1 after all the injuries that they've suffered so far this season.
Yeah, I think we got
is it
lunch.
lunchtime? Do you see it coming in?
Lunch.
All right, it is time to find out what is for lunch. So let's go ahead and bring in our sous chef. There he is. Brandon Chambers is back out from our 10 News Cafe, our semi-pro developmental football league wide receiver.
Yes.
First of all, Brandon, what's on the menu today?
Today we have the baked stuffed chicken with risotto and asparagus. And inside of it is spinach, feta cheese, sun-dried tomatoes, and Swiss chard.
Ooh, I like the feta. Gives it a little Mediterranean thing going there. Very nice. Very nice.
Does it come with a fork?
Yeah, no, we'll get you in there in a second. We'll get you in there.
We'll make sure you get something.
All right. All right, Brandon. First of all, have you had a game yourself since we last talked? Okay. Give us an update on
we definitely came back from a 3-game skid. We won last weekend 50-6.
Woo!
Yes.
Wow.
So we got
on the wrong end of that one.
We played the SoCal Eagles from Los Angeles.
All right.
So We definitely got everything back on track and back on the road. So we're back on the road again next weekend up in San Bernardino. So hopefully we'll give them a good game as well.
All right, what's that, 5-3 on the season now?
Yes, it is.
5-3 on the season. All right, so back on the winning ways. That's what we like to hear. Chargers Raiders yesterday. I was interested in the last play. Jason Verrett.
Yes.
Grew up as a Raiders fan.
Yes.
And has changed his colors completely. Now a Chargers fan. By the way, Craig, I don't know if you know this. Dwayne Poley of the Aztecs tweeted out last week, Raiders fan changing his allegiance to the Chargers as well.
All right.
Everyone's doing it now, Brandon. I'm not saying anything. I'm just mentioning that everyone is switching from the Raiders to the Chargers right now. But hey, Jason Verrett makes a big play as a defensive back. I mean, you've probably seen some good ones in your day, but that was one of the better plays I've seen.
That was one of the top plays that I've probably seen from a rookie in a long time. And for it to be a big game-changing and actually close the game out, it actually made me kind of excited for him to see what he's going to have for the future.
What about the fact that he was celebrating the interception
as he went
down?
As
he was going down, and he was pulling in the ball, and then he's lifting up his other hand going, his foot was in by maybe like an inch on the sideline, but he knew right away that he had that interception, was already celebrating as he went down to the ground. I mean, if that's not confidence, that guy has a little swagger.
And even at 5'11", though, just going up for the highest point for that ball and then coming down, that's what makes it the most amazing play for him, though, just for him to go up and get that ball from the receiver.
Yeah, Chargers continuing to get varied receiver play. I mean, Phillip Rivers is getting everyone in action, but tell me about Malcolm Floyd. Obviously, you don't have the same, as a wide receiver, you don't have the same kind of game as Malcolm Floyd. He's 6'6", but the way he goes up and grabs those balls at the top, he had a couple more yesterday, including that 43-yarder when he just went up, and he had another one where he was interfered with. You remember that one, Craig, where he just went through and caught it? I mean, he is playing as well as I have ever seen him play. We weren't even sure he was going to come back after that scary injury in Philadelphia last year.
What it looks like to me is like he's playing for a contract. That's what it looked like. He looked like he want to stay in San Diego for another few years. That's what it looks like.
Heck, I would have been so glad to know Malcolm come back for one more season if he just, as a swan song. But now he looks like he could play for a couple of more years. So.
I honestly can't see him playing for another.
I'm knocking wood for both you guys. I mean, this is a guy who's been hurt every year of his career. I'm knocking the wood right now.
Fair enough. And, I tweeted out during the game, I wonder what Malcolm's numbers would have looked like if he had been reasonably healthy over the course of his career. I mean, he just got to his 250th career catch, I think, last week, which, does not sound like a lot for a guy who's been in the league now 11 years, starting on the practice squad when Phillip Rivers was first drafted in 2004.
He used to be, to me, guys, the 40 catch for 750 yards guy. He'd make a big play, but he wasn't a reliable possession receiver. But what I've seen over the evolution of his career is now being a route runner, getting those hands, not just for the leaping catch in the end zone, but over the middle and on out routes and dig routes. He's just developed so much as a receiver over the course of time. Even while he was injured, he's still been learning, and he's grown as a player. And now I think we've seen it all kind of come together. He doesn't have quite the same blazing speed, but certainly enough to get the job done.
Brandon, great to see you, by the way. Take that with you because it smells too good, and it'll just distract us during the course of the show. So find somebody to eat that, and we'll get our own after the show.
Right.
Good to see you, as always.
Thanks for having me.
All right, what's for lunch with Brandon Chambers, our sous chef here at the 10 News Cafe. Always good to talk to Brandon.
Good stuff.
Now, one of the interesting things about the game yesterday, maybe unexpected, was how close it was at the end. And one of the things Chargers players and coaches were talking about after the game was how that might actually be a good thing in the long run. So let's listen to a little bit from Phillip Rivers and Mike McCoy talking about the close game yesterday in Oakland.
It was big to be in a tight game, be down, have to answer. They score, we score. They score, we score. It was a typical NFL division game, and it was good. It was good. Everybody contributed. It was, again, our toughness, I think, showed down the stretch, and it was great to get the win.
There's a lot of things we're going to learn from this football game, and the great thing is that, hey, we found a way to win at the end. That's the only thing that matters in this business now, is finding a way every Sunday or whatever day we're playing is winning. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. There's plenty of things to, learn from them, and some things we're going to point out plenty of good things too. But there's give and take in every week. As long as you win, you move on to the next one. We'll enjoy this flight home and get ready for another tough one next week.
All right, usual Mike McCoy platitudes at the end. But I actually believe in what he and Phillip Rivers are saying. If you get the win, you don't really get much out of a 31-0 victory over the Jets. Maybe a little bit of confidence, going forward. Hey, we're a pretty good team. But what really is going to serve you later in the season is being put in those fourth quarter situations where you either need to drive for a score to win or make a stop to win a game. And the Chargers did both of those yesterday. Whether you think the Oakland Raiders are any good or not, they still get to carry that with them the rest of the season. Hey, we did it. We were down 7. We scored 10 unanswered points. We got the 3 and out. We got the turnover at the end when we needed it. You can't take that away from the Chargers now.
In today's NFL, Ben, the unpredictable is the predictable. Each and every week you go out there and you see a team that stumbles into a performance and you go, oh, wow, I didn't really see that coming. Boy, Pittsburgh's going to get blown out in Cleveland, et cetera, et cetera. The Chargers so far, very much to their credit, have beaten the teams they were supposed to beat. And that is not to be dismissed or taken lightly. That is something that doesn't come easily in today's NFL. So, yeah, beating the Jets and destroying them is impressive because then you just see the very next week it's not as easy for the Broncos to beat the Jets. And it comes down to the last possession. And then to be tested on the road. And I think for 1 week, that might have been the Raiders' best single punch that they throw all year. First week, Sperano, everyone's inspired. Carr pitches the perfect game almost as a rookie, and they still lose. Road wins like that can help, I think, for the psyche, the camaraderie of a professional athlete and coaching staff. It helps really seal that bond.
Any road win is a good win in the NFL. I don't care if you're playing an 0-15 team. You go on the road, it's always going to be more difficult. When you're at home, and we saw this against the Jets last week and a little bit against the Jaguars. If you get a road team on the ropes a little bit, you generally can make them fold. You can, hey, you know what, let's just go home. We'll get them next week. The fans aren't with us. We're losing by 20. Let's not worry about it. That doesn't happen when you're on the road. A team playing in front of their own fans is going to have some pride usually. They're not going to want to look bad. They've got their family. They got their friends there. They got their fans there. They're going to give you a much better effort in most cases. And when you let them, score early like the Chargers did yesterday with the long touchdown on the third play of the game, all of a sudden the Raiders instantly think, okay, well, we can win this now. And they played like that the rest of the game.
And you bring up a good point, but when you look at, for example, those road teams you cited, Blake Bortles, Geno Smith, the quarterbacks. Let's take it back to a guy we haven't talked about enough on this show, which is Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is playing the best quarterback of his career. I mean, far and away, the best quarterback I've ever seen him play. Right now, Phillip Rivers is playing at the level where you say, is he the best quarterback in the NFL today? Is he right there with Peyton Manning in terms of his performance and metrics? You can make those arguments. And think about it. I'll give you one play from the game, Ben. Phillip in the second quarter rolls to his right. I used to tweet this, and nothing good happens ever. Until yesterday, when he calmly slots it right past the linebacker and down the sideline for a completion. Mike McCoy has taken Phillip Rivers and elevated him from a really good quarterback to now maybe a fringe Dan Fouts Hall of Famer type quarterback. And it's because of that you can come back on the road because you've got him dropping dimes.
It's different eras. It's hard to compare different eras. But if you look at Rivers' numbers versus Dan Fouts' numbers, Rivers' numbers, look very favorable compared to Dan Fouts. He's in the Hall of Fame. Dan Fouts is a Hall of Famer. Got there, obviously, without ever winning a Super Bowl for the Chargers. Now, Rivers plays in an era where, you got Drew Brees throwing for 5,000 yards a season. You got Peyton Manning. You got Tom Brady. I don't think that Phillip Rivers goes to the Hall of Fame without getting at least one ring on his finger, maybe a couple at the end. But the numbers are certainly there if he adds that playoff resume. I don't know what you feel about the quarterback rating statistic, passer rating. It's a little too complicated for me or I think most general fans to understand. Right. There's a maximum of like 156.7.8
or
something like that.
It's higher than my temperature, I know that.
It factors in, completions, incompletions, yards per completion, turnovers, interceptions, sacks, everything like that, and they come up with this number. Now, Phillip Rivers has set an NFL record by having a passer rating of 120 or more for 5 straight games. No one in the history of the NFL has ever done that.
Wow.
Johnny Unitas and Kurt Warner both did it 4 games in a row. They were tied with Rivers until yesterday. So you could make the argument that he's the hottest quarterback the NFL has ever seen in its history right now. You can make the argument, at least. I don't know whether it's true, but by their numbers that they put together, it is true.
Maybe not the hottest, maybe the most efficient. I mean, look at the pass to Eddie Royal for the touchdown. That was backpedaling in the pocket and put only where Royal could catch the ball. And those are the type of throws he's making right now on a routine basis. And that brings me back to Mike McCoy, because for all of his platitudes and how much I can't even stand listening. I basically don't listen to his press conferences anymore. They're useless for the words. But whatever he says inside those rooms, man, this is a guy who turned Tim Tebow into a feasible NFL quarterback for a year that won 8 games. Look what he does with something real. Like Phillip Rivers, he elevates him now to where we're starting to make these Dan Fouts comparisons.
All right, if you want to participate in the Bolts Brown Bag, there's a couple of ways to do so. You can dial the number at the bottom of the screen right there, 619-717-6704. We'll put you right on with us on the show. Or you can tweet us at Bolts Brown Bag, and we answer questions out of the Brown Bag every week. We're going to do that in just a second. First, though, Craig, every week I give a Bolts Brown Bagger of the Game award. And it's not necessarily to – I could give it to Phillip Rivers every week. This isn't for the star. This is for a guy who's working hard. He's usually in the trenches, or a defensive player who's doing something big. So today's Bolts Brown Bagger of the Game award goes to... All right, Jason Verrett. And he was a bit of a star yesterday with the interception, but that's not necessarily why I'm giving him the award. What I was impressed by was the fact that Jason Verrett took a pretty hard fall in the second half there.
Yes,
was
he
diving
did.
for an interception.
Went out.
Had to leave the game momentarily, but the Chargers were already down Sharice Wright, who was inactive for the game with his knee injury. Brandon Flowers was out. He had to leave the game in the second half, and they were down to Richard Marshall and the rookie Chris Davis out of Auburn at cornerback. I love the way that Jason Verrett toughed it out. I don't know how badly he was feeling it right then, but he got back out on the field in a couple of plays and was out there when his team absolutely needed him, and I obviously made the big play that ended up sealing the game. I love to see that toughness out of a rookie. So, Bolts Brown Bagger of the game for Jason Verrett.
I love it. Nothing but positives for Jason Verrett, who in his rookie year, now we're starting to see what he can do. Is it wrong to just have one little question, which is, can he stay on the field in his career? I've got this tiny Bob Sanders feel right now on Jason Verrett that can he physically hold up? Yes. And the injuries. It's the hair and the coming off the field all the time.
I was watching. It's an amazing head of hair that he's got. I can't help but wonder, doesn't it slow you down a little bit, just the weight of that hair on your head? You have to carry it around it's got to slow you down just a touch.
Just a touch.
But if that's where, it's like Samson.
That's why he's so fast.
That's where you get your power.
Just to make it fair for everyone else.
You got to have the hair. So congratulations to Jason Verrett. All right, let's open up the brown bag, and we'll start taking some of the questions out here today.
All right, what's in the brown bag?
From the Brown Baggers. All right, first one comes from Scott, who says, when will San Diego stop fair catching all the kicks? 13's return yesterday was the key to the win. Now, that was a big play we haven't talked about yet. The punt return by Keenan Allen that helped set up the winning touchdown on the final drive.
And for Keenan, who's really had a tough year, he has not had the offensive year that he has wanted to. That, to me, that type of play, Ben, that is perfectly emblematic of when the coaches run out there and say, team football, team effort. That was a team play because there's a starting receiver that's going to go in and make a special teams play because he knows his team needs it to win the game.
Mike McCoy has been talking a lot. When people ask him, all right, well, what area do you feel like you need to improve at? He often says the return game. We need to – now, kickoff returns, the Chargers aren't just getting any. All the kickers they face seem to pound the ball into the end zone, and there's really no chance to return kickoffs. So I think that's a part of the game that you really shouldn't be spending a lot of time on anymore because, hey, maybe once every 2 games you're actually going to return a kickoff. Let's not waste a lot of time. Now, punt returns are a little different. You brought in Eddie Royal. If he's healthy, was a dynamic punt returner, with the Denver Broncos. You remember that game, I think it was Monday Night Football when the Broncos were wearing those hideous throwback uniforms with the socks.
Things,
and he
socks.
returned a couple of kicks. But you're not really getting much out of him, and I don't know whether it's what the opposition are doing or if the Chargers are just being really cautious. But it does seem like fair catches are usually the order of the day when the other team's punting.
And I reserve judgment for a few weeks because maybe the Chargers have run into some good punts early on, but that's becoming just from what I see watching all the games at once, Ben, I think that's becoming more and more the norm that you see fair catch over a punt return. It's also an injury risk, a big one.
All right, back to the brown bag, and we've got 10 News' own Jared Aarons, one of our new reporters. He's great, by the way. He's an Arizona Cardinals fan. Good sports guy, though. He asks, did David Carr expose a lingering problem of mounting injuries in the secondary? You know, that's a good question because the secondary has been one of the healthier units. Obviously, Wright's been out a couple of games, and Flowers missed a game with an injury and was out late. But they got a dieback. Weddle's been out there for every game. I don't know. I think it's the nature of the NFL. If you give a quarterback time, and you talked about this earlier, if he's a decent quarterback, no secondary on earth can cover those guys forever. And if he's putting the ball in his spots, which I thought Derek Carr did a number of times, I don't know if that exposes the secondary. They just didn't get the help that they had received in previous games.
Yeah, I would take it the exact other direction. I'd say that it exposes the lack of a pass rush, and a lack of a pass rush exposes your secondary. And it's that straightforward, basically. Until the Chargers get some sort of consistency up front, you have to reserve judgment as to whether they're going to take it next level because you have to wonder whether guys like Peyton are just going to carve them up.
All right, tweeted question just in here from our friend J.T. Rogan, who you do some radio with, right? Former USD running back.
All-time leading rusher.
He says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad was the NFL scheduling to give the Chargers at Oakland off the bye, and then versus Kansas City this week off the bye, and then they have to go to Denver on a Thursday night? We talked about a little bit on last week's brown bag when Hal Clement was in here, but that is a rough stretch for the Chargers to face two teams who both get the extra rest to prepare for you, and then you got to go on the road with 3 days to face your biggest rival in what is probably the biggest first-half game of the season.
You've also just had 3 cupcakes in a row, so let's look at this as the other side of the hill. I think the Chargers' schedule has broken down this way for a long time. You looked at this early part and said they really have to make hay in the first 6 weeks, and that's why being 5-1 is ideal because they're really, other than a little mini 2-game cushion in the middle there, where you've got Oakland and St. Louis coming in back-to-back after the bye, it's all tough games from here on out.
All right, another quick one here from Raymond. He tweeted in, why did the coaches wait until Donald Brown got hurt before they even started Oliver? That's coaching. You sign a guy, a free agent who's a veteran, who's experienced. He's going to get the nod over an undrafted rookie. No matter how impressive that undrafted rookie looks in practice, he's going to need someone to get hurt to get his opportunity. And that's what the case. What matters is you make the most of the opportunity, and Brandon Oliver's certainly done that.
He has. And, guys, let's celebrate that Brandon Oliver is off to an incredible start to his career. It is not impossible that we've seen the 2 best games of Brandon Oliver's NFL career. That's not impossible.
No.
I think you brought up the Jermaine Fazand comparison before, and I'm not saying that he is, okay?
No.
But
Jesse Chapman had a huge game.
Right, and you've seen guys for 4 or 5 weeks go crazy. So let's back off on saying, well, why did the coaching staff not start him before? Because they're at practice every day, guys, and they see the All-22 film every day, and he was behind the other 3 guys. There was a reason.
And Mike McCoy gave a lot of credit to those other 3 guys as well for helping to get Brandon Oliver ready for this opportunity. Matthews, Woodhead, and Brown, who were all in that meeting room, and, giving Brandon Oliver pointers. And what really impresses me about Brandon Oliver, 100-yard rushing game, what he's done, that's terrific. I love the ball security that he's shown. I keep worrying because he fights for that extra yardage, and it's so hard to bring down. His legs are churning, and, 2, 3, 4 defenders coming in, and I'm going, just go down, kid. This is the NFL. They rip that ball out of your arms when you try to go for those extra yards. Even veterans can't hold on to it forever, but he does not want to give up that ball. He's churning, getting those extra yards, and maintaining that ball security that's so important.
Well, there is an alternate reality version of yesterday's game where the Chargers fumble at the goal line and lose instead of winning 31-28, maybe with a different running back that's been here before. And that didn't happen. So, kudos to Brandon Oliver. Hey, to get an opportunity to play in this league, it's the ultimate opportunity for somebody like Brandon Oliver. So he's taken this and maximized his chance. We celebrate that, but I think, you you hold off before you start anointing him as the next LT.
All right, we're going to bring in Ferris with our 3 questions in just a second. First, though, our 10 News cameras were at Chargers Park last night, where I don't know if you know this, but even regular season games, you've got fans waiting for the team to arrive. So let's look at some of that video.
I wanted to show my guys some love, let them know that we're happy with the W. Either way, I would have been here, but definitely glad that we ended up pulling it off in the end.
All I got to say is much props to Barrett for pulling it off at the end, and go Chargers.
My prediction, 14 wins. Boom. We're going to go all the way.
Okay, I'm wondering, who does he think they're going to lose to then? They're 5-1 right now.
They
So
got 1 loss,
14-2.
yeah. So
one more somewhere along the way. Now, we didn't find out. He seems very confident, but
they're going to punt that Rams game. It's just going to be a real shocker.
It's impressive though. The really diehards who a lot of them are out there every single week after a road game waiting for, and West Coast games, that was about 7:30 or so when the Chargers pulled in, but East Coast game later, it might be 9-10, late at night when they're welcoming that team back. They always have at least a couple of dozen fans who are there to welcome them back every single game.
Would you do that?
No.
Me neither.
No,
Sorry.
I wouldn't. I love the Chargers. But
Love
no,
you guys.
wouldn't do
I'm going to
that.
stay at home.
All right, Craig, this is our web editor, Ferris.
What's
He
up,
comes
Ferris?
in
How you
with
doing? Good,
3
buddy.
questions each week about the NFL, so be ready to think on your feet. Question number 1, Ferris.
So the first question, one of the best games yesterday in the early slate was Packers-Dolphins.
Yes.
It ended, of course, with that drive by Aaron Rodgers. So with 12 seconds left in the game, Packers are down 24-20. Rodgers, there's 12 seconds left. Rodgers pretends to spike the ball and then throws an out pattern to, Devontae Adams, who runs it to the 4. They score a touchdown on the next play. Was that fair or foul for him to fake the spike?
Not only is it fair, it is not unprecedented. Dan Marino won a game in the Meadowlands against the New York Jets, doing the exact same thing. It was, I want to say, in the late 80s, early 90s, where he did the fake snap, the fake spike, and he threw a touchdown to Mark Ingram on the right side. It's an absolutely fair play. Deception is part of the game.
It's not like he bunted to break up a no-hitter in the 7th inning. And I'm glad you brought this question up because this is where baseball and football are actually very different. Because I don't know that football has the unwritten rules that baseball seems to be governed by.
Yeah, no rules. There's a fumble-rooski in football.
In fact, anything you can get away with in football, you can steal,
What about
Spygate,
what about the Manziel play a couple weeks ago, where he went to the sideline, pretended to be like going out, and then
I think that is actually against the
rules,
and it didn't get called. So that's a little different. That's up to the officials to enforce. But
it's a little hairy high school, but
if
you could do
spike
it,
play, as you said, they should know that in Miami. That's the one place where it was successful before. So they should be ready for it. Although, you know what? If he didn't get out of bounds, right, they would have been in trouble. Because
but what about the idea
that
that the defense relaxes? They see him spiking. If they rushed, I don't know. If the defensive line, they could have gotten a penalty if while he's spiking they kind of.
So that wouldn't have worked against Tampa Bay the last couple of seasons with who's their coach?
Oh yeah,
Greg Schiano.
Greg Schiano rushing the rushing
on
Eli
the kneel downs, on those last ones. So
I loved that, man. That's Aaron Rodgers just showing his ultimate savvy. Now, if they came in just to answer that question directly, then he could spike it. But as long as he's got the ball, he's live.
I'd like to see a Rivers-Rodgers showdown right now because Rodgers is playing great too. Two of the quarterbacks playing the best in the NFL. All right, question number 2.
Question number 2. All right, one of the most painful games for me. I'm a Bengals fan. Yesterday, it's tied at the end of overtime.
Yes. Mike Nugent whiffs a white, super easy kick.
36-yard kick. Should the NFL do something? This is the 3rd straight season we've had a tie game. Should the NFL do something to have a winner and a loser at the end of every game?
It's funny because the new rules for overtime that were implemented either last season or the season before actually will probably lead to more ties. And this is the first time I can remember it happening, but Carolina, or was it whoever kicked the first field goal?
Yeah.
And then the other team gets a chance to respond. And when they kick the field goal to respond, all of a sudden there's only like 3 minutes left. So there's not enough time to play it out in sudden death the rest of the way, and you end up with the tie because of the rule change, basically.
Well, I'll tell you what. I talked about this yesterday on our Mighty 1090 Red Zone show, which is on Sundays, Sunday afternoons on the Mighty 1090. Coach better if you want to avoid ties. Riverboat Ron Rivera, throw that out. Risk-averse Ron Rivera.
He left the riverboat, and he invested his money in the bank at 1% interest on that 4th down.
Think about this, guys. He's got a 4th and 1. He's got a 4th and 1 with 3 minutes to play in overtime, and he knows that the opponent has one timeout and he has none. Okay, so nobody's got any timeouts.
He's never going to have time to get the ball back.
There's no chance that when he kicks that field goal that his team's going to win the game unless Cincinnati fumbles the football or throws an interception. That is the only possible way Carolina wins. So the second he brought his field goal unit out there, he was playing for max upside tie,
and still
downside loss.
Really great
Well,
chance
no,
they're gonna
what
lose.
he was playing was he wanted he just assumed Andy Dalton was going to throw an interception.
Well,
right.
I mean,
that's what he assumed, which I assumed as well.
They should have lost that game. I mean, you're giving the other team basically a free 3 minutes to kick a field goal and beat you. You got a 4th and 1. You should be able to convert that 60-70% of the time, and then you got a chance to win the game outright. I thought it was a terrible decision, even though maybe it worked out, because if they don't make the 4th and 1, the game's over right there and they lose. But I still think it was a terrible decision.
I'll stand up in front of the media and go, we played to win the game. We didn't get the yard, but we played to win.
You wrote this, I think, in one of our joint columns about whether or not the NFL should go to college overtime rules. What do you think of that?
I don't hate the college overtime rules. I think they're entertaining, but I hate what they do to the statistics. Because
how would it impact my fantasy team?
Well,
Ferris?
when you've got NFL offenses as efficient as they are, if you've got 2 great offensive teams or 2 great defensive teams, and great kickers, by the way. I mean, if you've got 2 stingy red zone defenses and 2 great kickers, you'd be there all day.
What if it was just a touchdown? Though? What if you had to score a touchdown?
There's no field goals allowed.
No field goals, just touchdowns.
And you have to go for the 2-point conversion every single time.
Yeah, if we can institute the action point, then we can go there. But I'm okay with it. Let's stop coaching like ninnies in the NFL. Let's coach to win the game.
That would solve it completely. If the coaches would just do the right thing when they're supposed to, it wouldn't have been a problem in that game. All right, question number 3.
So the last question: the Browns and Cowboys. If I told you they were combined 8-3 6 weeks in, you would have laughed at me at the beginning of the season. But they are. Browns are 3-2. Cowboys are 5-1. They handed the Seahawks only their 2nd loss at home since the beginning of the 2012 season. Are they for real?
Boy, you win in Seattle, you're for real in this league. I mean, you are. Even though I looked at the Cowboys when they came here to play the Chargers and thought, oh, this has a chance to be a team with the 1st overall draft pick. They are horrid. Defense is horrid. I mean, Tony Romo, if he turns the ball over at all, they're going to lose by 30 every game. I was wrong. This is a good team. I mean, that's a good Cowboys team.
DeMarco Murray.
Yeah.
DeMarco Murray has run for 100 yards 6 straight games. So he's the NFL MVP right now. If it's not Rivers, it's DeMarco Murray. And if the Cowboys can run like that, then Tony Romo is a game manager with one of the single best big play assets in the entire league in Des Bryant out there to beat Richard Sherman in a key play like he did yesterday. Can the Cowboys' defense sustain? That is something that we'll see over the course of 16 weeks. Will Tony Romo start becoming an interception Pez dispenser in December like he has throughout his career? I will reserve judgment on the Cowboys to then. The Browns, I think, are legit. The Browns, I thought, were legit last year. I talked about that on 1090 all the time, that they were a good team. I watched them all year. A good team with the worst quarterback in the league in Brandon Weeden that just destroyed them. So just upgrading from Weeden to Hoyer is enough to make them a winner.
What are they going to do now? Because they have Menzel just sitting there, and if Hoyer is good, so are they going to give Hoyer a big contract at the end of the year?
I don't know how the contract situation works, but Johnny Manziel shouldn't even be near the field the way Brian Hoyer's playing. And by the way, Cleveland doesn't have a very tough schedule. If you look, I don't think they play a team that has a better than 500 record now until week 14.
Well, they're going to make the playoffs.
Maybe they should trade Manziel to the Jets.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the Jets are willing to take on everyone else's lost cause.
But I think and they got rid of Norv in the offseason.
So your pick, your kind of dark horse pick were the Eagles. So do you think the Cowboys can beat the Eagles?
I'm looking forward to that game. I still think the Eagles are the team to beat in the NFC East slightly over the Cowboys even after that game, but I think they're going to play a couple really entertaining games this season, and I am going to look forward to seeing them match up on the field.
Do you remember when they played last year and we were all going, oh, this one's going to be 60-55, and it was like 10-7.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so those games will just muck up a little bit. I really think the NFC East is going to be a gas because it's going to be those two teams. The Giants are mediocre and the Redskins are pretty bad, and that's going to stay that way. This is going to be fun, but I think the Cowboys a lot better than we thought, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Ferris, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Good 3 questions,
stuff,
as always. All right, let's look ahead. Chargers are going to take on the Chiefs on Sunday, back at home, so that's a good thing. They're going to be in front of the home crowd. Another divisional game, that stretch of 3 divisional games, but this is a legitimate team, the Kansas City Chiefs. They have, a good quarterback, if not the best in the league, but Alex Smith has shown he knows how to win games. You've got Jamal Charles, who's running the ball. You've got, you did lose some players in the offseason. The offensive line isn't as good. They've had some injuries on defense, but after seeing what they did to the Patriots a couple of weeks ago on Monday night and hanging tough in San Francisco last week, yeah, this is a game that's going to be tough for the Chargers, no doubt about it.
How quickly we forget, Ben.
What did we forget?
How quickly
What did we
forget
forget?
that last year the Chargers had a game that they absolutely had to win in Week 17 at home against a Chiefs team with nothing to play for that played all of their backups. And if Ryan Suckup doesn't shank an easy field goal, they lose the game. The Chiefs are pretty good. The Chiefs are deep. Andy Reid is one of the best coaches in the NFL. He's the Marty Schottenheimer of his era. You give him any kind of talent, he wins double-digit games, clanks it in the playoffs at some point. This is a good Chiefs team, and I've watched them week by week this year. They're not underrated. The way the line is playing, even through injuries of their own. They've had some big-time injuries on the O-line, but you've got now Jamal Charles back, but Niall Davis has shown he can get the job done, and we saw that last year with Niall Davis as well. So I am in no way underrating the Chiefs. I think people are underrating the Chiefs overall.
Yeah, speaking of Andy Reid, by the way, what should be a worrisome stat, as a coach, his record coming off bye weeks, 13-2.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. The 2 have come in the last 2 years with the Chiefs and the Eagles. So
0-2.
he was 13-0.
He's 0-2.
0-2 in the last 2 off the bye weeks. But he has historically been very good when given 2 weeks to prepare for an opponent.
And, again, this is what I keep looking at as kind of the overarching theme, Ben. I'm excited about this Chargers team. But until I see how this team looks in the second half, I'm going to reserve saying – championship for the Chargers because the roster has just been impacted so hard by injuries. I think through these weaker opponents, we've seen them look real good. But the bigger challenges are to come. If they get through those, then I'm all in.
Absolutely, especially given the experience that some of the backups have gotten during the first half of the season.
Yeah.
They're going to have more depth when they face these opponents. And hey, a lot of these teams are going to be beaten up in the second half of the season as well. So you look at the second half schedule right there. I mean, you get to the bye week and then 2 easy home games, hopefully, against Oakland and St. Louis. And then, Baltimore's looked really good. New England's back in first place. Denver's good. San Francisco, after a slow start, has quickly improved. And it's always tough to win at Arrowhead. I mean, that's still the 5-game lethal stretch that we thought it would be when the schedule came back out in April.
And if you could win 3 of those games,
wow, I'll take it. Right.
I mean, right?
Sign.
Then you're probably
signing up for that right now.
You're probably the number 1 wild card, or you're right there with Denver,
right,
for the AFC West. If you could win 2 of those games, you probably still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So. That's the money you've got in the bank right now from starting 5-1. That's the key to this start. Is now you've built in a little bit of cushion in case you wobble in the middle of the year. Don't lose heart at that point.
All right, let's wrap it up by checking the results of our poll question. And the question was, if you've forgotten, which newcomer has had the biggest impact on the San Diego Chargers season so far? And leading the vote right now with 62%, Chargers fans like offense. Brandon Oliver. 29% say Brandon Flowers, 9% say Jason Verrett has had the biggest impact as a newcomer on the Chargers.
I think
so
that
far.
Shows your influence on the show, Ben. You really sold the Brandon Oliver pick, and you came in second there, and I think you won that one. Good job.
I voted for Brandon Flowers, though, in the actual poll.
Thank
because
you.
I agree.
That was my pick.
I know, but I was trying to spark a little discussion.
Uh-huh.
You have a San Diego soccer season coming up.
Yes,
so
sir.
The microphone is yours. Convince everyone out there in internet land why they should be coming and checking out the San Diego Sockers.
Well,
this
guys,
season.
the first thing I'd say, Ben, is I don't have to do much convincing because this is a very popular team. Over 4,000 fans per game showed up last year. I think we're going to have a big attendance here. But I tell you what, if you first of all, if you've never come to an indoor soccer game, please come. This Saturday, our doubleheader, preseason doubleheader, and there's so many cool things happening in the sport right now, Ben. We saw what the World Cup did and how exciting the World Cup is. There's a World Cup for indoor soccer coming this spring. And we will see the first time U.S. versus Mexico, those U.S. and Mexican national teams playing this Saturday at the Valley View Casino Center. Many of the Sockers are on the U.S. national team. The Sockers will play Tijuana prior to that at 6 p.m., but our regular season starts November 1st against the Las Vegas Legends. The Sockers have moved into a new unified national indoor league, the Major Arena Soccer League, 20-game schedule. It's really going to be great. 866-799-GOLD. Go get your tickets.
And we'll have highlights for you, of course, on Valley View Casino and Hotel Sports Extra on the weekends here on 10 News as well. So thanks for coming in, Craig. Good to see you.
All right, for the Sockers plug, too.
And that'll do it for another edition of Bolts Brown Bag. We're here every Monday at 12:30. We'll talk to you next week after the Chargers take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Have a great week.